This program is made possible by the loyal financial support of the friends and partners of Family Policy Institute.
You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world.
Good evening and welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we're going to get a response to the State of the Nation address delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa on the 13th of February. And to help us navigate through all of this, I've invited Steve Swart, ACDP MP and member of the Finance Portfolio Committee and the
Justice Committee,
and many others. So Steve is one of the hardest working MPs in Parliament. And it's so great to be talking to you again, so welcome to the program.
Thank you, Errol, and good evening to your viewers as well.
Thank you, Steve. So we want to start with, I don't want to touch on, the chaos by the EFF that happened in Parliament, delaying the State of the Nation address by about 90 minutes. You could see the agitation on many opposition party members. This was deliberate, it was thuggish behavior. Most South Africans are used to this, unfortunately. But what I did admire about you is when different MPs were given an opportunity to speak, you stood up and you said there should be action taken against the EFF. And you called the believers in the House. You said to the believers, it is time to stand up. Why did you say that?
Well, it's very important to understand there are many believers in the House. And we need to take spiritual authority, we need to take action to stop this behavior once and for all. We've had it for almost 4 years, 5 years in the last term, and now my call is for all believers in the House. We prayed together, millions of people watching, we're also praying, but we can't allow this to continue. Our name and our reputation throughout the world is being tarnished by this thuggish behavior, and that is why I stood up with a sense of righteous indignation.
And I could see that when we were watching the whole thing, Arlen and I said, wow, I'm so glad that you stood up and that you said that. Now, Steve, this State of the Nation address, or SONA, many people, many political analysts were saying has to be the most decisive of Ramaphosa's presidency. It was his fourth one. He made some promises in 2018. We all remember the New Dawn speech. And they were saying he's going to have to lay down the law on this one because of the real state of our nation, the real state of our economy, state-owned enterprise, and all the other issues that most people are aware of. The question I want to ask you is twofold. Firstly, the things that pleased you about what he said and the things that didn't. And do you believe he went far enough to address the real issues that's facing South Africa today?
Well, firstly, the nation has been calling out for strong leadership and for the president to put South Africa ahead of his own narrow political party interests. And we know that largely the situation we're faced with is due to ANC corruption, ANC state capture, and policies that they've implemented which are not acceptable. So he did rise to the occasion to a certain degree by stating that we are facing the stark realities of low economic growth, high unemployment, corruption, etc. And so from our perspective, there was the focus on the economy is to be welcomed. The focus on helping stabilize Eskom, which of course affects everyone on a day-to-day basis, was welcome. And the fact that for once he was able to say Tito Mbowene's economic growth strategy, we are going to implement that. So there have been a number of plans in the past. South Africans are requiring action. They want urgent action to remedy the situation facing South Africa.
Now, so, Steve, I'm glad you raised that issue because that's one of the issues that's been lost on most South Africans, and that is that the current situation in our country with the economy, with the reign of state-owned enterprises, all of those issues, looting of state public funds, it was caused by the ANC. It's not a previous government, another government that caused it. It is the current government that we have in place. It's been in place now for 25 years that destroyed the economy of this country by their actions, by their mismanagement, looting, theft, fraud, racketeering, the whole thing. And so it's incumbent upon President Cyril Ramaphosa to put those things right and act in the interest of the people of South Africa. And you're not convinced he's doing that?
Well, firstly, he was there as deputy president when a lot of these issues, when state capture took place. But we welcome the fact that his new administration, with its reform agenda, has restored SARS, the NPA, the Hawks, and slowly they are moving in the right direction. But our frustration is it's taking too long. Investors are saying it's taking too long. Businessmen are saying it's taking too long.
And it doesn't
they
have
want
to
see action.
And it doesn't have to take
Correct.
that, because he knows as a businessman, he knows what needs to be done. So what you're saying then, and many people are agreeing that if he's not doing it, even though he knows it needs to be done in the interest of the people, he's not doing it because of the ANC.
Absolutely. And the issue is the pushback from within the party itself. The number of people that are implicated in state capture, are sitting in Parliament. Exactly. And we're not seeing enough action taken against those high-profile politicians. We're not seeing sufficient prosecution. We understand some of these cases are very complex, but surely by this stage we would have seen more prosecutions. So my role in the Justice Committee is to call in the NPA, to call in the Hawks and say, why aren't we seeing more action taken place? My role in public enterprises, as you know, with the Eskom inquiry as well, we want to see action.
Now, very importantly, Steve, besides you guys wanting to see action, the international investors want to see that action. I've been reading, and most of the people, even when Tito Mboweni went to the World Economic Forum in Davos, got the same message. When Angela Merkel was here from Germany, got the same message. They've got to see seriousness with the issue of corruption, and the only way they're going to be convinced is when people are prosecuted and imprisoned for the crime of state capture, of stealing, looting, racketeering, frauding, everything that we've seen in this nation. Now, as you mentioned, many of the people implicated are sitting in parliament benches, and the ANC are shielding them. The Secretary General of the ANC, Aish Magashule, is implicated in so much corruption, fraud, maladministration. Zwane, Faith Mutambi, all these people, they have cushy, chairpersons of portfolio committee roles. And it's almost like the ANC is rewarding these people for what they've done to this country. And even the international investors can't understand this. And they're saying if we don't see movement in this area, we cannot invest in this country. And Ramaphosa is traveling around the world along with Trevor Manuel, asking for investment, 1.2 trillion rand of investment, has reached halfway mark on that, very good. But still, do you think that if we start dealing with the corruption issues and see prosecutions, that we'll see a lot more movement in that area?
Yes, absolutely. And that is what investors are calling for. And so we, from an oversight perspective in the ACDP, will be asking the NPA what progress is being made. And we welcome the emphasis on this aspect to placate for investors. We welcome the focus of SONA on the economic growth side of things. And of course, we know Tito Mboweni will be announcing his budget in 2 weeks' time, which of course, the figures are going to be startling. And that again is a legacy of looting and corruption. That again is the aspect of government expenditure shooting through the roof, wasteful expenditure, and we are going to see a very high budget deficit, and of course the investors are not going to like that. Moody's is sitting on the sideline, so we really need to be praying, but we need action in our nation, because we know when the righteous rule, the people rejoice.
Now let me deal with the issue of the National Health Insurance Plan and expropriation without compensation. We know these are two things. Firstly, the National Health Insurance Plan, nobody knows where the money is going to come from. The government doesn't have money for that. Even this sovereign wealth plan and the state bank and all of these things, the government doesn't have money for that. And it's populist, but Ramaphosa announced this in the State of the Nation. Then the other thing is expropriation, which that is going to cause further destabilize our economy. Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. National health insurance is a wonderful plan. Every citizen should be entitled to the best possible medical care. But at the moment, the private sector cannot carry the whole of the population. We say we cannot afford nationalization of the private sector of the medical health care, rather improve the public health sphere. Rather make that the best in the world than waste money on this national health insurance. And of course everyone would want that, and we too, but it is unaffordable at the moment, and we have seen many of our top specialists are saying if this is implemented, they will leave the country, and we'll have a number of Cuban doctors then coming in.
That's
of
right.
course, the land issue, you know our stance on that. We are in favor of an orderly land reform process, restitution for the wrongs of the past, but we cannot allow expropriation of land without compensation. That policy is ridiculous, and how can you give a government that is so corrupt more power?
Exactly. So can we trust the ANC with this? Because most people saying all this is going to be is they're going to take productive land from people and give it to ANC cadres and politically appointed people, because the ANC does not rule in the interest of the people. They've proven that over the past decade. They rule in the interest of the ANC. It's not in the interest of the people. So you can't even, land reform is a noble objective. But the people that is tasked with doing this, and nobody really trusts that they would do this in the interest of the people. But so, Steve, tell us what needs to be done. You've heard the President's State of the Nation address. You've heard what he said out there. There were some good things, like allowing municipalities to buy their own private energy and all those kind of things. That's helpful. But what are the things that he hasn't said, he hasn't pointed at that needs to be done?
Well, there are a number of things. We believe the state-owned enterprises, that is probably the biggest drain on our finances. And we are not seeing quick enough action to stabilize Eskom. We now see talk of pension funds being taken, 250 billion rand to bail out these SOCs. Certain of them must be sold off. The crisis at South African Airways, where there is business rescue, and now the president and the government is interfering in that process. Allow that process to continue. We welcome the fact that for once, government and the president is saying, let's bring in the private sector. Up to now, the private sector and business have been the big enemy. Government must create the enabling environment for economic growth, for job creation, and partner with business to do that. And then, of course, bring in the churches for social welfare growth, bring in them to assist. And so there's a lot that can be done to improve our education, our health system, and of course, crime. We believe government is largely failing in protecting its citizens, which is its primary duty. Absolutely. And this, of course, is an issue which we, myself in particular, in the Justice Committee, we stand very strong on, that criminals must fear the long arm of the law. At the moment, it would appear that they are getting away with it, and that cannot be tolerated.
Yeah. Steve, we've got 1 minute left. There is still a lot of hope in South Africa, including international investors. Many people say this is a nation with huge potential. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom, but we've got to address the fundamentals in this country. And so stagnation with the growth, less than a 1% growth at the moment. A lot of things need to be done. So what is your message of hope as we close?
Well, the message of hope is from Proverbs. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. Let's get the fundamentals in place. Let's put the citizens of South Africa ahead of narrow ANC political cadre deployment. And let us make sure that we turn our economy around so that people have jobs, so that we can grow the economy and everyone can have a safe and prosperous standard of living. That is God's purpose and destiny, we believe, for our nation, and we are trusting God for righteous rulers in our nation.
Absolutely. Steve Swart, thank you for your insights. Welcome back to the program. My next guest in the studio is Bridget Masango, who is an MP with the Democratic Alliance, or the DA, and she's also the Shadow Minister of Social Development. Bridget, thank you for coming in and speaking to us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Errol, for having me. It's an amazing opportunity for us.
Thank you. So, Bridget, you've obviously been in Parliament for the State of the Nation address. Previously, I spoke to Steve Swart. And I want to ask you your views on the State of the Nation address, the things that President Cyril Ramaphosa got right, and the things he hasn't, the things he still needs to do. So give me your views, please.
I think the State of the Nation address was a true reflection of what's going on in South Africa, in that the President tried to sort of give us a picture of how far he has gone, him and his government have gone to actually right the wrongs that are happening in this country. But also what I appreciated was his honesty in the things that have not been done, which the country is well aware of and the country is experiencing. For example, the president said something about, you know, the utility Eskom, and the fact that he's looking at opening the municipalities to actually obtain or acquire their own electric power.
And that was a good thing.
That was a good thing. That
Very
was a
positive.
good thing, because also as the Democratic Alliance, we've been saying this, that give municipalities the power to actually get their own power, as it were.
Yes.
And the president spoke at length on that, you know, and that is appreciated. And also the fact that, you know, he acknowledged the damage that is being done to the country by the high levels of unemployment, especially among youth. I mean, he had a number of projects that are on the pipeline to try and combat the issue of youth unemployment. So those are the things that we believe the president, although he stopped short in case of the Eskom, of saying, how then can we privatize some of the Eskom parts to make sure that, you know, the Eskom is actually making money, so that we stop this thing of always taxpayers paying or getting Eskom out of its debt.
Taxpayer bailouts has to come to an end. So he hasn't gone as far as he should.
Yes.
When we consider the stagnation of the economy,
Yes.
the state of the state-owned enterprises,
Right.
the looting, all those kind of things. Why do you think he hasn't gone far enough? Do you think it's because of his alignment to the ANC, is that he's got to please the ANC before he pleases the people of this country?
Yes, the president had an opportunity to tell South Africa or South Africans whether he chooses the country or his party. And it was clear that this is a man who is saying, look, I will rather be right by my party than South Africa. And he does seem like a president who is saying, if I could, I would, type of an attitude to his State of the Nation
Because as
address.
a businessman, he understands the business world, he
Right.
understands the economy.
Right.
He's traveling around the world,
Yes.
asking people to invest into the country.
Right.
All of that. So he understands where South Africa is, and he laid that out in his initial comments
Yes.
in the State of the Nation address.
Yes.
However, he's not doing the things he knows he must do.
Yes.
And so the only reason it can be because of the ANC and
Yes.
its alliance partners, COSATU and the South African Communist Party,
Yes.
is that they're laying down the laws, and they're saying this is what must be done and this is what you
Precisely.
cannot do.
Yes.
And it's not really the reality of where South Africa is.
Exactly.
It's what the party wants, not the country.
Precisely. And I mean, can you just tell me, I know you are asking the questions, but can you tell me why we haven't seen any high-ranking government official in jail?
Yeah, so me and Steve spoke about this as
Yes.
well, and everybody's asking the same question,
Yes.
especially the international investors.
Precisely.
They are getting jittery, and they're saying, we'd love to invest. South Africa's got great potential.
Right.
We want to invest, but we, after the decade of the Zuma years, the disaster of the Zuma administration, all the looting, mismanagement, the theft, the fraud, the racketeering, we haven't seen any high-ranking official prosecuted, imprisoned for what they've done to this country.
Precisely.
And so therefore it looks like you're protecting the corrupt
Yeah.
and the wicked.
Yes.
And so we are not confident investing in a country where the corrupt, the thieves, and the fraudsters are protected by the ruling party.
Precisely. And that is where you know that the president's hands are tied, that he is a president who has set all the right things in place, but for those things to actually start rolling and producing results.
And Shamila Batoy, the
Yes.
National Director of the Public NPA,
Yes.
was appointed with great fanfare last year,
Yes.
in March last year, or February last year. And a lot of promises were made, and
Yes.
people are still waiting.
Yes.
And I think that is the key thing that everybody wants to see both locally, domestically, and internationally, is to begin to see some move on dealing with the issues of corruption, because this country cannot go forward until you do that. And nothing is happening on that front. Tell me, and talking about corruption and the ANC's view internationally and in the eyes of the people of this country, do you trust them with expropriation without compensation? Because we need land reform.
Yes.
But is the ANC the people that can be trusted to do this?
Well, it's known worldwide that Section 25 can actually have the land reform happen without expropriation, without compensation. And government has had budgets put into the land reform project, but nothing has happened. In fact, in some circles, which is actually true and supported by law, people are saying that let the government show us with the land that is already in its own possession that it can do land reform before we go to...
Absolutely. So you're saying that Section 25 of the Constitution does not need to be amended?
No.
The way the law currently is they can do the land reform.
Yes.
They can affect the land reform. But the reason they're doing this, it could be it's populist.
Yes.
It's like the National Health Insurance Plans, right?
Of course.
You, the shadow minister for social development with the Democratic Alliance, and so, health insurance plan should be something positive.
Right.
But again, the question is, where does government get the finances, the funding to be able to make this happen? And do you see the ANC rolling this thing out effectively?
I don't, Errol. And just to give you what people who are already in the system are doing, the doctors, we are told that medical, very highly qualified doctors are saying, should this thing pass, we are out of here. Those are the people that are in the system itself. So you can see from the health system in the country at the moment, the public health system is failing. It's scary. People are standing in long queues. Hospitals don't have beds. Doctors are not employed. How on earth do you think that a system that is already failing as a public hospital or public health system can actually have the national health insurance? And we are saying as the Democratic Alliance that fix what is there now. Use these budgets that are passed every year to fix what the public health system is, so that you can show that when the national health insurance comes in, people will be afforded good health services. Yes.
And we don't have that at the moment.
We don't.
And it's because a lot is due to mismanagement.
Precisely.
And unskilled people being cadre deployment and all those kind of things. I've been reading, Bridget, a number of articles that is suggesting that even Eskom's problems is not really due to lack of maintenance, it's mismanagement.
Yes.
It's the fact that they don't have the right skilled people, they don't have the engineers, the technical people they need. Eskom is currently overstaffed by 16,000 people, and they can do nothing about it because the unions hold a gun against the head of government, like in education, which is failing. The union is holding the gun against government, and they cannot deal with those things because they cannot. Their hands are tied.
Those are the votes.
Exactly, it's the alliances.
They can't tell their voters you are going to be losing your job, because then it means they don't have a vote come 2024. So they are just stuck between a rock and a hard place. And that is what we're experiencing at the moment. And we are saying that the government, for its own good even, the government must fix the state-owned enterprises. It must fix its hospitals. It must fix what is available now, so that we can see. There was a pilot that was done for the NHI, which was a dismal failure during the times of Dr. Motsoaledi. And so it just goes to show that if you turn the entire country's worth of the public health system and hand it over to this another SOE called NHI, you will just be doing what has been done to Eskom. And I mean, even the Minister of Finance is asking the South Africans, what must I do with, what can be done with the SOEs? This is a very serious thing, and the president had an opportunity on the 13th to say, guys, we are doing 1, 2, 3, and 4. And obviously, as you said earlier, he cannot.
Yeah. Do you expect Tito Mboweni, the finance minister, to stand up in parliament and sort of lay down the law and say, look, guys, this is the brutal honesty of where we are as a nation, and this is what we have to do, otherwise this country is going to sink? Would he do that?
Yes, I believe, and he has shown signs of that. I believe that he has the courage, and he comes across as a minister who has nothing to lose, who says this country must come right, because that is what he says all the time. And he calls his colleagues out all the time when he speaks. But we know all that. Our problem is partly as individuals, but also as a party, as the Democratic Alliance, we are saying, where is the implementation? We hear very hard words coming out. We hear President Ramaphosa saying, guys, corruption must end. But then nothing happens.
No prosecution.
Yes.
Yeah,
we are saying,
it's not convincing people.
It's not.
Including the international investment community.
Yes.
They want to see action on this front.
Right.
Otherwise, they're not going to be putting billions into this country if they know that you still have people like Ace Magashula,
yes.
who's the Secretary General of the ANC. You've got
yes.
people like Zwane, Faith Mutambi, and others still in government positions, and yet they're implicated in all kinds of things.
Right.
You look at the issues with the public protector,
Yes.
supposed to be protecting the public and watching over government affairs. Now there's
Yes.
all kinds of issues surrounding her.
Yes.
And the ANC was so happy to put her into the position. They said she was the best person. And now various high courts, even the Constitutional Court, they said this woman doesn't have even a proper application or knowledge of the law.
Yes.
She's corrupt herself because
Yes.
she skirted over with the Stina Dairy Farm scandal.
Yes.
She didn't implicate the Secretary General of the ANC or Zwane, and
Yes.
yet there's so much evidence pointing
At
to
them,
them, and she wouldn't do that. So, the ANC, I think, is its worst enemy.
Yes.
They are supposed to be correcting the wrongs of the past. The 10 years or the 9 years of Zuma and all the damage done to this country. They promised the country that they were going to correct all those things, and they're not doing it.
Yes.
They're protecting their own.
Yes.
But Bridget, South Africa still has huge potential.
It does.
There's silver linings.
Yes.
The international investors still have a lot of faith and trust and hope in this country. What is your word of encouragement and hope?
I am saying my word would be that we have seen a lot of involvement by the civil society, and that gives one hope, because then it means that South Africans have seen what's going on, and they are willing to go out there and make their point known. And I am saying that there is a huge role that can be played also by the religious community. About this, I'm talking about the Christian church itself. It needs to rise to the occasion and stamp out what it believes is not happening right. South Africa is known to be a majority to be Christian. So let's take
Absolutely.
the battle where it's supposed to go and deal with this.